starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all the reading? I just can't wait to be hearing story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all the reading? I just can't wait to be hearing.
Good morning, and welcome to Story Time. Thank you for joining me. Yes, Happy Lunar New Year to everybody that is joining in today. Thank you for being here, and I hope that you're ready for a wonderful story indeed. We do have Ruby's wish. What is your wish today? Thank you so much for joining in. This one coming to you from Chronicle Books of San Francisco. It is written by SHIRIN YIM Bridges and illustrations by Sophie Blackall. Thank you so much for joining in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Ruby's wish is coming up. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please do let me know where you're joining in from and who is joining in with you. Ready to enjoy a wonderful story, and of course, wonderful stories every day. Thank you so much for being here on Story Time. I am glad you're here. Out here in Oakland, it's getting bright indeed, and hopefully we do have some good weather as well. So I hope that where you are is not too bad, and hopefully you're used to what you have as well. Thank you so much for being here. And what are you doing for this Lunar New Year? Thank you for joining in Story Time. So glad that we're here today. And you know too that one of the things is by wearing red on Lunar New Year, it is believed to bring good luck. So I am in my red today, hoping for all that good luck, hoping to drape myself in that good luck. And yes, looking forward to what this year brings. Thank you so much for joining in Story Time. And this is, of course, an occasion, an event that is celebrated in many countries, including North Korea, South Korea, China, Brunei, the Philippines, Malaysia, and so many more. And of course, we know that it is celebrated also around the world in many different cities, in many forms. Thank you for joining us today. And indeed, for me, I thought it is a celebration as well. Here on Storytime for every community. Yes, we are supposed to be celebrating every community, learning about each other, enjoying each other's company, and of course in each other's cultures. Thank you for being here. Multicultural society that we live in, and absolutely appreciate everyone out there playing their part. Thank you for being here on Storytime. Let us see who is with us this morning, ready to enjoy a wonderful story. Are you cozy enough? Thank you so much for joining in today. I hope you are well. Thank you for being here. All right, let us see who is with us. Good morning to you, Sarah and Nathan. How are you doing today in sunny and bright and pleasant? Oh my goodness, Illinois sounding beautiful today. I love it. Thank you so much for joining in. Sunny and bright and pleasant. Well, enjoy this. I hope it is indeed wonderful for the rest of the day as well. Happy February and happy Year of the Tiger. Yes, let's hear you all, you tigers, roar out there. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Glad you're here. From the Year of the Pig here, we're sending you love as well, wishing you well. What is your year? Please remind us. Thank you for joining in Storytime. Good morning one more time, Sarah and Nathan, and of course not forgetting you, Amanda West. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. I hope you're ready for today's story, Ruby's Wish, and this one from SHIRIN YIM Bridges and Sophie Blackall, and of course read with permission from the publishers Chronicle Books Books of San Francisco. Thank you so much for joining in. And we move along all the way east. How are you doing today? Indeed, Bowden in sunny Vermont. Of course, Chris and Mitchell Adams. Thank you so much for joining us on Storytime. Good to see you here, and glad that the storm passed and you're here, and hopefully everything is okay there. Hopefully you have power and everything else. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Great to see you here, Bowden. Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Year of the Tiger. Thank you for joining in. Oh, good morning to you, Ali Amin in Washington. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing? And of course, Jessica, thank you for being here. Welcome to Storytime. Good to see you here on Storytime as always. I am glad you are here. Thank you for joining in. Oh, let us see. Betty Deshay, how are you doing? And of course, Rikia from Oakland. Yes, indeed. And I'll be seeing you at school later on as well. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime, Rikia. And of course, Betty, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us today. Oh, I love it. Chris and Mitchell, thank you for sharing this paper craft. Of course, Grace Lynn is amazing indeed. And so hopefully everybody else gets to see those, and please do go on and follow that as well and get to participate in some of those amazing crafts, or indeed share what you are doing as well, just like Chrissy did, and so that we know what you're up to and others can also enjoy getting the fun as well. Yes, indeed. What is something that you know about the Lunar New Year? Thank you so much for joining in. And we know that this is an event that is celebrated over a period of time. It's about 2 weeks. It will be celebrated, and of course, many different things, many different gifts are passed around, including, of course, the famous red envelopes. May you get plenty. Thank you so much for joining in. And of course, there are also beliefs and rituals that go with this tradition in Asian culture. So please do learn the do's and don'ts, and figure out some of those things so that we do not offend out there. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Glad you're here with us. Madalena Iron and Tudo in San Francisco. Good morning to you and welcome to Storytime. Good to see you back. It is so lovely to have you back on Storytime on the regular. Absolutely appreciate it. And hopefully in the time you were away from our lives, you've been joining us later on for the recordings and enjoying everything. Good to see you here. Thank you so much for joining in. And have you been able to travel to Oklahoma at all? Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Good morning, Tudo and Madalena Iron in San Francisco. All right, before we get started with our book, of course, we're going to hear a little message from one of our authors and creators out there, and I hope that they can just say good morning to all of us. Good morning to you. Ruby's Wish is coming up. This one from SHIRIN Bridges and, of course, Sophie Blackall, and coming to you from Chronicle Books of San Francisco. Please do join us on the other side of this message.
This is Anika Mrose-Reese, author of The Teacher's Pet, Watch Out for Wolf, Love Sophia on the Moon, the Anna Banana chapter book series, and Hide and Don't Seek and other very scary stories. And you are watching Storytime with Mr. LaMotta.
Thank you, Anika. Thank you so much. And yes, if you've not checked out Anika's books, please do. Amazing books indeed. Love Sophia on the Moon, one of my favorites, of course. And Hide and Don't Seek. That one is also beautiful. And of course, the Hannah Banana series, we know, right? All right. Ruby's Wish. SHIRIN Bridges and Sophie Blackall, and of course read with permission of Chronicle Books of San Francisco. And I must say too, before we get started reading, to Braylon and Chad, and of course Auntie Pam, saying good morning to you out in Nakitosh, Louisiana, and of course Marietta and Henry out in Massachusetts, Sarah Forster out in Massachusetts as well, and of course Amanda Wortman, Marlin, and of course Baby Bia out in Seattle, and everybody else that is joining in that we're forgetting to mention here. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Ruby's Wish. Here we go. There we go. Ruby's Wish. Ruby's Wish. Written by SHIRIN YIM Bridges, illustrated by Sophie Blackall, and read with permission and published by Chronicle Books of San Francisco. Aww. If you walk down a certain road in a certain city in China, past the pet market with its yellow and green rice birds hopping in their bamboo cages, and the goldfish and the turnips in their porcelain bowls, you will come to a block of houses, 5 houses wide and 7 houses deep. Many families live here now, and the buildings are brown with age and dirt. But if you look closely, you will see that once upon a time, this was all one house, the magnificent home of one family. Can you picture that? The house was built by an old man who returned from the Gold Mountain. That was what the Chinese called California, when many men left to join the gold rush there and few came back again. But as I said, this man did come back, and he came back very rich. And he did what rich men did in old China. He married many wives. His wives had many sons, and these sons also had many wives. So at one time, the house was filled with the shrieks and laughter of over 100 children. Oh my goodness. Oh. Everybody laughing and running around in the house. Amongst these children was a little girl that everyone called Ruby because she loved the color red. In China, red is the color of celebration. On New Year's Day, children receive red envelopes full of good luck money. Brides wear red on their wedding days, but Ruby insisted on wearing red every day, even when her mother made her wear somber colors like all the other cousins. Ruby would tie up her jet black hair with red ribbons. Yes, why not celebrate every day, right? Because he had so many grandchildren, Ruby's grandfather hired a teacher to come to the house. Any grandchild who wanted to learn could join the classes. This was unusual in China in those days, when most girls were never taught to read or write. Whenever the weather was fine, classes were held in the garden. The windows of Ruby's grandfather's office opened onto the garden. Often he would rise from his desk to gaze out of his windows at his grandchildren. Ah, doesn't that sound nice? Class in the garden. I want that. Oh, I wish every school could have those gardens where you could sit out when the weather was nice, isn't it? That is my wish for today. Oh. One day, Ruby's grandfather looked down from his window to see the high white wall of the garden plastered with calligraphy. His grandchildren had been practicing their handwriting. Ruby's grandfather laughed to see that many had smudged ink on their hands and faces. Then he noticed a sheet that was more beautiful than the rest, which of his grandchildren had produced such wonderful calligraphy? He asked. Down in the garden, the teacher was praising Ruby. Her ears were turning as bright red as her jacket. Aww. Yay. But if Ruby was doing as well as her boy cousins in her studies, she had to work much harder. When the boys had finished their studies for the day, they were free to play. But the girls had to learn about cooking and keeping house. In fact, as far as their mothers were concerned, these were the only things girls had to learn. Oh my. One by one, the girls stopped going to the classes, all except Ruby. She would catch up on her embroidery at night. Many nights her candle flickered long after everyone else had gone to bed. One day, the children were asked to write a poem, and Ruby wrote, "Alas, bad luck to be born a girl. Worse luck to be born into this house where only boys are cared for." Ruby's teacher was very impressed by the poem. He showed it to Ruby's grandfather. Ruby's grandfather showed it to Ruby's grandmother. And they were also impressed, but he was worried about what the poem said. He summoned Ruby to his office. Oh no, what was to happen? Ruby found her grandfather sitting in his chair, her poem spread open on his desk. "Did you write this poem?" asked Ruby's grandfather. "Yes, I did, grandfather," answered Ruby. "Do you really think that in this house, we only care for the boys?" "Oh no, grandfather," said Ruby, very sorry that she had upset him. "You take good care of all of us, and for that, we're all grateful." "Little Ruby," her grandfather said gently, "I really would like to know why you wrote this poem. How are the boys better looked after?" "Well," said Ruby, trying to think of a small unimportant thing. "When it is the moon festival and we are each given half a moon cake, the boys always get the half with the yellow moon yolk." Said the grandfather, as if he was still waiting. "Is that so?" "Yes," continued Ruby. "And when it is the lantern festival, the girls are given simple paper lanterns, but the boys have red lanterns in the shapes of goldfish, cockerels, and dragons." Ruby's grandfather chuckled. He had never thought about it before. He could imagine how much Ruby would have liked a red lantern. "But most importantly," said Ruby, staring hard at her red shoes, "the boys will get to go to university, but the girls will be married." Don't you want to be married?" asked her grandfather. "You know you're very, very lucky. A daughter of this house can marry any man." "I know, grandfather," said Ruby, "but I would much rather go to university." Ruby's grandfather touched her hair. "Thank you for talking to me, Ruby," he said. "Go on with your lessons. Make the most of them while you can." So Ruby went on with her lessons. Some of the boys grew up and went away to university. Some stayed in the house and started families of their own. But when they grew up, all the girls were married and sent away to live in their husbands' homes. Ruby knew it would soon be her turn. In the ponds, Ruby could see the orange and white cap gulping from breath under a thin layer of ice. It would soon be Chinese New Year. Ruby felt sure it would be her last one at home. I am really struggling with these pages today. On New Year's Day, Ruby put on red velvet shoes and tied red ribbons in her hair. Then she went to wish everyone a happy New Year. She started with her married cousins, then worked her way up through her parents, aunts, and uncles. Each one gave her a red packet full of lucky money. Finally, She bowed before her grandfather. "Good luck and prosperity, grandfather," she said. "Good luck, little Ruby," replied her grandfather. And he handed her a very fat red packet. What could it be? Ruby could feel the eyes of all her family on her as she opened the lucky red envelope. Can you guess what was in it? It wasn't money. It was something much better than that. What could it be? What do you think? It was a letter from a university saying that they would be proud to accept Ruby as one of their very first female students. So that's how Ruby got her wish. It's a true story. And how do I know this? Well, Ruby is the author's grandmother. And every day she still wears a little red. Oh. And there's the real Ruby and the Ruby today. Oh, the end. Thank you so much for joining in Story Time. I hope you enjoyed that wonderful, wonderful story indeed. Ruby's Wish. This one written by SHIRIN YIM Bridges, and of course illustrations by Sophie Blackall. And we're reading this one with permission of Chronicle Books of San Francisco. Absolutely love it, and a great lesson in there indeed for us. It is the little things that sometimes we do not see as adults, but let us please remember to give us our little ones space, provide spaces, safe spaces that they can express themselves, and indeed making sure that we nurture them and help them achieve their dreams, achieve their goals, or at least attempt at achieving their goals. Be the supportive adults that we can be. Thank you so much for sharing that. And indeed, we know that there are many things that this world needs to change, including how we take care of our girls. And let us please make sure that we're improving. Yes, women's rights is a thing, and we need to be working at it. We need to see how we treat people in our societies. Indeed, whether it's job opportunities, employment, job opportunities, or loans, or whatever else that is there that needs support. Let us make sure that we are taking care of each other, looking and making sure that we are fighting against those unjust policies that are out there. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. May we continue to create those spaces. Happy Lunar New Year. My wish for you today, indeed, for every little girl out there, is to flourish as much as they can and to have the support from everybody around them. Thank you so much for being here on Storytime. Love being here with you, and of course, great lessons indeed every time, learning from each other. And today, indeed, we were learning a lot from Ruby's Wish. I hope that you enjoyed it. I did too, and hopefully that again we continue fighting for what's right. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Happy Lunar New Year, and may all your wishes come true, and indeed may we continue to celebrate our communities. Thank you so much for joining in. But Storytime is not done. We are back again tomorrow for more, and please do let us know what else you're doing out there for Lunar New Year, or indeed just for the year in general, just for the month in general. And you know what else it is? It is Black History Month starting today. Thank you so much to everybody that are sending great messages. And of course, indeed, let us remember to keep going out there as well and celebrate the beautiful Black culture. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. And we will be kicking off our story looking at, of course, Black characters in books and books created by Black authors and illustrators as well. And tomorrow we get started with this one. Evelyn Del Rey is moving away, and this one is by Meg Medina and illustrations by Sonia Sanchez, and it will be coming to you from Candlewick Press. So do join me for this one, and let us enjoy this beautiful friendship that will be on display tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. So glad that we were here together. Thank you. Let us see one more time who is here with us on Storytime and got to enjoy that lovely story indeed. Thank you so much for joining in. How are you doing indeed? Auntie Pam, thank you for being here. Thank you. And you're saying Auntie Anna alerted us that you said hello. Well, indeed, always sending you love, always thinking of you. Thank you so much for joining in as we rush to breakfast to be here. Well, I am glad you had breakfast with me today. Thank you so much for joining in and say this was a beautiful book. Thank you. Braylon, Chad, Auntie Ann, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, wherever you are, Jamil, today we do not forget you as well, sending you much love. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. This is what it's about, learning together. And yes, reminding each other of all the important things that we can do in society, even the little things that matter. Those do matter indeed. Thank you so much for joining in, and provide those spaces for our little ones to speak up, to speak their mind, and indeed let us continue to nurture and help them flourish. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Absolutely love the time that we're here together, and may we continue to break those glass ceilings. Yes, indeed, like Ruby, demand, and of course, let us make sure that we support those things, that this world can become a fairer world indeed. It is not a man's world. Nuh-uh. It is for everybody. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Absolutely appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Madalena Iron, one more time, thank you for joining us on Storytime. Highly appreciate you. And of course, Tudor, thank you for joining us. Betty Deshay and Rikia, good morning to you out here in Oakland. Chrissy, thank you for sharing this one with Bowden out in Vermont. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing those crafts indeed on Grace Lean's website. Yes, as you know, well celebrated illustrator. Please do join Grace Lynn and find out on that platform what is happening. But of course, do find many places that you can find activities and crafts for Lunar New Year. Thank you so much for joining in. Ali Amin, how are you doing one more time? And of course, Jessica, thank you for joining us out in Washington. And of course, Sarah and Nathan, and of course, Amanda West. Thank you for being here on Storytime. Absolutely appreciate you. And we'll see you again tomorrow for more Storytime when we join in the moving van, because Evelyn Del Rey is moving away. Do come and join in for this one and enjoy it some more right here on Storytime. Thank you. Please remember to send me recommendations, and we will do our very best to bring them here to you on Storytime. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Happy Lunar New Year. Happy Black History Month, the beginning of Black History Month. And of course, remember too that this is the month of love. May you have all the love that you deserve. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. See you in the morning. Much love. Bye-bye.
He brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be hearing. He brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be hearing. Brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't